Elokeinu means Elokeinu means king. Is that what you said? You can be more literal, because the word for king, as far as I know, is melech, which you're going to notice is conspicuously absent from this. This bracha says Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu. It's a very weird way of starting a bracha, because most brachas start Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu what? Melech haolam. And not only that, but the Gemara says that any bracha that doesn't begin with what's called Shemu Malchus, it doesn't begin with God's name followed by Melech, is not a valid bracha. And yet, Shemona Esrei begins with such a bracha. It does not have the word Melech. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, and then we're waiting for the Melech haolam, and it goes Elokei Avosenu, and God of our fathers. Why? What do you mean?
It calls up a memory, because for me, I'm thinking maybe I would just be like this little yid, and I'd be like, wow, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob won't be that powerful with me. I won't have those. I don't know. Won't show himself in that same way. I won't have that merit. It's for that exclusive group.
Not sure I'm following you.
The point is, it can go either way. But in a way, when I call this up, either way, I could just feel like, will that same Hashem be revelatory to the simple individual? So maybe, this is, anyway, to me, this is just a segue into all those memories of the stories, the promises. Saying, okay, Hashem, this is you promised that to Avram. You see what I'm saying? Because there was such greatness revealed, such intimacy.
It's true.
Right?
It's true. What you're saying is not incorrect. However, we have to grapple with the problem of we need a melech haolam in a bracha to make it valid. And here, it seems to be missing. And the question is, A, why is it missing? And B, why is it replaced with this? Notice that the next three phrases are Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. God of Avraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov. So we are going to make reference to the three of us again. And yet somehow here, in the Melech HaOlam part, instead of Melech HaOlam, we say Elokei Avosenu.
It's the same God.
It's the same God.
It's true. Looking back to the time, by saying that, but you're saying the same God that presented or manifested itself to our forefathers is the God that I'm praying to now.
Yes, that's true. I agree with you. But what happened to Melech HaOlam?
But that's hate to be like this, but that Melech HaOlam isn't the Jewish God.
But we reference him all the time. But he's in all the brachas, and the Gemara says it needs a Melech HaOlam in order to be valid.
That's fair, but those are universal. Maybe those blessings belong to the whole world. Maybe, I don't know. But this is our own. This is our Jewish relationship. When we go back to those four parents.
Okay.
More than that, it's our individual relationship, because each of those people, it says the God for each of them separately. It could just say Elokei Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but it's Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. There's something about the individual summoning the God that is their God.
Is it Avosenu?
Say again?
Isn't it in the word Avosenu? It's our Father. Our Father?
Right.
So
Avosenu, our Father.
So is it something along those lines because it has the word Avosenu in it? And doesn't mean Melech?
So, why?
Because Melech, everyone has a Melech. Any human being has a Melech, no?
Okay.
So Melech has to work for everything.
For the many. This is for the individual.
It's not the people who got told.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it precedes king because we wouldn't know who the king was unless we had the fathers who referred to Hashem as the king.
Okay, so I think you're all coming together to the right idea. I think Yitzchak really nailed it. In other words, the whole Melech HaOlam thing gets started with Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's the Melech HaOlam. Why? As we said, this king is not a Jewish king. So there's different kinds of Melech. And what's interesting is when we say the word Melech, and we usually mean what we usually think of as king is not the king of the Jews. It's not our king. When we say king, we mean Elokei Avosenu. That's what we mean. But this is where it comes from. In other words, let me put it in some more eloquent terms. Okay. So there's a famous story of Onkelos Hagir. You familiar with Onkelos? If you open up any standard Chumash, you'll find close to the center binding of the page, there are these little letters, these little words, and it's a translation of the Chumash into Aramaic. And on top it says Onkelos. What is this? It's a very, very holy translation of the Torah into Aramaic by a very, very holy person named Onkelos Hager. Onkelos the convert. Onkelos was a nephew of the Roman Emperor Titus, who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, who became a convert to Judaism. And this angered his uncle like nobody's business. And he sent many groups of soldiers to abduct him and bring him back to Rome and get him out of this Jewish cult that he had joined. But every time a group of soldiers would approach him, he would engage them in discussion and he would end up bringing them to Torah. And so they all defected. So the last group, Titus said, whatever you do, don't talk to him. Just gag him, put something over his mouth, and just carry him out. Don't talk to him. So that's what they do. They come, they grab him, they put duct tape on his mouth, whatever it is, and they're carrying him out the door of his house, and he reaches for the mezuzah and he kisses it. And this just inflames their curiosity, and they couldn't contain themselves, and they say, what was that? What did you just do? And he goes, so they, they pull the tape off, and they go, what is that thing? He says, it's a mezuzah. They said, what's a mezuzah? He said, well, let me ask you this question. He says, which king would you rather serve? He says, let me ask you how you serve your king. He says, do you stand outside of his chambers guarding him, or does he stand outside of your chambers guarding you? And say, what are you, crazy? He's the king. He doesn't stand outside our chambers guarding us. We stand outside his chambers guarding him. He says, not our king. See that mezuzah over there? That's a sign that our God stands by our doorway and he protects us inside. Our king stands outside and protects us. Your king, he sits inside while you stand outside. Which king would you rather serve? And that was it. They were done. They became Jews. So this is a famous story, and it reminded me of there's a book I read called Escape from India. Has anyone ever read this book, Escape from India? It's an excellent, excellent book. This is a phenomenal book, Escape from India. It's so powerful. It's a true story about an Israeli champion, like a world champion kickboxer, who becomes a Baal Tshuva. He gets down on his luck. He essentially starts dealing drugs. He starts drug trafficking to get some parnasa, some extra parnasa. He gets caught in India. They throw him into prison, okay? And the Indian prison is like the worst possible place you could ever want to end up. If you go to the passport office, right, at least I remember in New York, you go to the passport office, there's this big sign, do not commit crimes in the countries you go to. They will not treat you well. You will not be put in a prison that resembles the prisons here in the United States. The prisons in these foreign countries are absolute torture holes. I'm paraphrasing, but there's like emphatic, you're going to travel abroad, don't commit crimes, it won't go well for you. Like this, when you leave the United States of America, all bets are off, right? So this guy, he describes the prisons. Here's a great summary of what he says. He says, if you walk down the streets of Mumbai, right? He says, there's so many people in the street, so much poverty. People are lying in the street, rolling in the muck, okay, eating dirt and whatever else. He says, the prison has to be designed in this country to be so awful that you would rather be on the street living like that than commit a crime being put under a roof where you're being fed. I mean, these people don't have food and they don't have a roof over their head, but they wouldn't dare commit a crime because going to jail is worse, if you could imagine. So he says, that's where he was, okay? So one of the, now, I don't want to give away the story. It's a beautiful story of tshuva. It's a beautiful story of tshuva, where he ultimately comes to the realization that the only prison that exists is the one we create for ourselves. Very powerful book. Okay. So By the way, the name of the book is Escape from India. Not to give away the ending, but the name of the book is Escape from India. Okay. I didn't name the book. Anyway, in prison, he's in a huge room with the all kinds of strange people. There's a group of Nigerians, and the Nigerians all gather around this one very large Nigerian guy who just like sits. He sits like Indian style, just like meditative all day. But what does he do? He plays chess. And like one by one, he plays chess. He plays chess. This guy, I think his name was Joe. Joe, the big Nigerian. And basically at one point, it's his turn to play chess with Joe. And Joe says to him, tell me, what is the purpose of chess? And he says, well, you gotta protect the king. And he says, no, you got it all wrong. He says, you're the king. Your job is to protect your subjects. All the pieces on the board, those are your subjects. Your job is to protect your subjects. Because that was his. Now you could disagree. I'm not a chess player, but just think about that. So here was Onkelos telling them, which king do you want to serve, right? So that's the Jewish king. That's the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. What they brought into the world was a relationship with Hashem, where Hashem loves his subjects, and his job is to protect his subjects. His job is to provide for his subjects. He's going to stand outside, and you're going to stand inside. That idea of Melech, is what we got from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So it's true, all other brachas we say, we're going to say Melech HaOlam, Melech HaOlam, Melech HaOlam. But what Melech are we talking about? We're talking about Elokei Avosseinu. That is Melech HaOlam. Now, there's really no other way around it, because there has to be with the halachas, there has to be a Melech HaOlam and a bracha for it to be valid. And yet the big, giant question is, here there's no Melech HaOlam. How could it be? So it has to be that Elokei Avosseinu means Melech HaOlam. The question is how. So that's my presentation of how. Okay.